Hello, 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 hello. Are we live? Are we live? Yes, we are by the looks of it. Looks like we're on. Hi, David. Hi, Stephen. Stephen Butterfield. This is the highlight of my week, which is kind of sad, honestly. Well, Stephen, it's the highlight of my week as well. So we're both in the same boat, I guess. David says hi. Hi, how you doing? It's been 2 weeks now, yeah. Didn't do last week, obviously, because I was quite ill. I'm a lot better now. Hi, Cyborg. How's it hanging? Yeah, let's hope we get more people on today than we did 2 weeks ago, because a lot of people were saying after last fortnight's stream that they want to get your notifications, and they didn't get any notification for the live stream, which is why there wasn't a lot of people there. And then I made a video where I mentioned to everybody to make sure you guys have your your notifications turned on and notifications for this channel turned on. So there's two things you have to do. You have to go into your YouTube settings and make sure you have notifications turned on. And if you want notifications for a certain channel, you have to click the notifications under any one of their videos. But even still, YouTube has a lot of problems with this, and it's not something that me and you can solve, unfortunately. Mr. Red, hello. Happy Goodfellas 30th anniversary. Yes, it is. So there's an interesting thing here with Goodfellas' 30th anniversary that I want to tell you guys. So obviously, there's been loads of articles coming out about Goodfellas because, of course, it's the 30th anniversary. David mentioned on that review I did of a movie, The Devil All the Time, that it was the 30th anniversary. A couple of you guys have mentioned it, and I mentioned many live streams ago that I had a lot of Goodfellas videos made, and I was going to release them in the run up to Goodfellas' 30th anniversary, but I haven't done that. And the reason is because I thought Goodfellas' 30th anniversary was next month. See, I typed in on Google, when is Goodfellas' 30th anniversary, and it told me October. And I don't know what happened there. Maybe it's that was the British anniversary, as in when it came out in the UK. Obviously, what I was looking for was the American release date. So I've clearly missed the opportunity there, because obviously it would be a good time to release Goodfellas videos, wouldn't it? Because that's when everybody's talking about it. But I have got a lot of videos on Goodfellas scheduled, but unfortunately they're scheduled for next month, not this month. So I kind of made a blunder there. But yeah, Cyborg, hope you're feeling better. Yeah, I'm 100% feeling better. Thank you very much. Elru saying, watching Green Zone, the chase at the end of this is one of the best in years. I haven't seen that, I don't think. I think I caught bits and pieces of it. That's the one with Matt Damon, isn't it? The Rock War film, I think it is. Yeah, I caught bits and pieces of it. Never finished watching. I am interested in seeing it. David Salgado, I heard you paint houses. Yeah, and I do my own carpentry. Yeah, I'm still watching The Irishman. I still go back and see it. Not obviously all of it because it's so long, but every now and again I'll be watching it. Yes, I'm gonna be that guy who says cuties should be banned. I haven't really been following this too much. From what I hear about it, it sounds disgusting. It sounds horrible, and I know or I've heard that the intention from the film director, what her intention was to highlight the how disgusting this culture is of what they're doing to these kids. But she goes too far into it that she ends up doing the very thing she's commenting on, the thing that she's criticizing. I mean, that's what I've heard. So I haven't really, I have no plan to watch anything like that. I'm disgusted just by the poster. Mr. Red, next Saturday will be the 30th anniversary of King of New York, and early this week was the 30th anniversary of State of Grace. Two films I've yet to see, actually. that have been on my list for a long while. David Salgado says, "Have you seen the Young Indiana Jones TV show? And if not, have you any plans?" I think I caught one or two episodes ages, many many years ago, but I never really seriously sat down and watched it. And to be honest, I don't have any plans to. I do want to start watching more TV shows because obviously I'm more of a movie guy. I haven't seen many TV shows, but I do want to start. And I probably have a lot of other shows that are in the queue before a Young Indiana Jones TV series. David Salgado's asking, "What is your favorite Ang Lee film?" With Ang Lee, I mean, I haven't seen all of his films. I really liked Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. That was a good film. I've seen Hulk, which was so-so. There's a few bits and pieces in that film I liked. Life of Pi was alright. I think that's what I've seen though. I haven't seen any of the other big ones like Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk or Lust Caution or Brokeback Mountain. But Crouching Tiger, yeah, that was a good film. I really like that. Stephen Butterfield's asking an interesting question. Are there any films you have a completely different? Are there any films you have a completely different effect on you now that you are older? Definitely, yes, there are. But all right, guys, sorry about that. I had a bit of a distraction. Right, so where are we? Yeah, so Stephen Butterfield asked, "Are there any films that have a completely different effect on you now that you're older?" Which is a really good question. I think loads of films potentially have that effect because obviously, I mean, the film hasn't changed. The film is the same if it was made 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever. But you as a human being have changed. Uh, you've experienced certain things in your life which have changed you as a human being, and this obviously can have an effect on the movies that you watch. I'm just trying to think of an example off the top of my head. Uh, I can't really think of one off the top of my head, but definitely there are, Stephen. Maybe I'll have to get back to you on that question after I give it a good thought. Cyborg's asking, where are we? Let me just scroll back up. Cyborg Bushin's asking, in your opinion, is Joe Pesci better in Goodfellas or Casino? He's definitely strong in both. I'd probably say Goodfellas. First of all, there's obviously the weight of his performance in Goodfellas being stronger, simply because Goodfellas came first, as in that was new, and a common complaint, which I don't really agree with 100%, but a common complaint is that Joe Pesci just did the same thing in Casino as he did in Goodfellas. But either way, both were very strong performances, but there were a lot more powerful scenes in Goodfellas. The standout obviously being the one where he does the funny house scene, which, the first time you watch that, everything just goes completely cold and you're frozen in the moment along with Henry. And there's a few moments like that in Goodfellas that just reach a certain height that I don't think Pesci necessarily reaches in Casino. So yeah, for me it'd be Goodfellas is Pesci's best performance from the two. Stephen Butterfield, you've seen Breaking Bad? No, I haven't. It's on my list. It's one that I've heard so much about. It's on my Netflix list, but no, I haven't watched it. Mr. Red, the film State of Grace, starring Sean Penn, Gary Oldman, Edward Harris, and Robin Wright. Great film about the Irish mob in Hell's Kitchen, West Side, New York. Yeah, that is another one on my list. Look, that cast is amazing, isn't it? Sean Penn, Gary Oldman, Ed Harris. I love Ed Harris. He's a great actor. Just let me know, guys, if you can't hear me properly, because I've turned a fan on in the background, because it's really hot where I am at the moment. Alex Spurs or Peef, so is it any good? Well, I watched the first season only, so I can't comment on the series as a whole. Throne-esque horror story nosedive of a season later on, but the first season was very good. I enjoyed it a lot. It's very simple, strong characters, and it seems to be a kind of a beta season, kind of beta test that will lead on to greater things. And from what I hear from people who have watched it, that is the case. So yeah, I really enjoyed the first season. I've reviewed it on the channel. If you want a more detailed review of it, just check out the review I did on the channel. And I'm looking forward to seeing more seasons from it. David Salgado's asking, how many Ben Kingsley movies have you seen, or what is his best performance? I've seen a fair few. There's probably a lot, like House of Sand and Fog, that I haven't seen. And that's supposed to be one of his best performances. There's others here and there, but he's been in loads of movies, hasn't he? My favourite performance of his was in Sexy Beast. I thought he was amazing in that film. He played such a deranged character. He was so good that I actually made a video on him, even though I don't usually make videos on films like that. His character Don Logan, I thought was a really, really interesting character, and the way Kingsley played him was amazing. He was so scary in that film. Mr. Red, I was hoping you were okay. Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Red. I have distractions sometimes because I don't live on my own, so there's things that happen in the background that sometimes I have to sort out. So that's one of the reasons why the live streams are so late. It's 11 o'clock in the UK where I am, but even still I get issues here and there. Sorry about that. Steve's saying, I'm so excited, Fargo season 4 coming out next Sunday. This season will be set in the 50s, about African American syndicate versus Kansas City Italian mafia family. Yeah, I heard about that. I heard a few people talking about that. In fact, it might have actually been you, Steve, on one of my videos. I never actually watched Fargo. I watched, I think, the first 2 episodes, the ones that had Martin Freeman in them. I just never got. I could never get into it. Is it good? Do you think it's worth watching? Is it worth me taking time out and going through that? I've heard so much about it, but I just could never get through the first 2 seasons. Maybe it's because I was comparing it to the movie always, and the movie I think is amazing, one of the best films of the 90s. So yeah, just let me know on that. Cyber Bushin, do you think that De Niro will be de-aged for his role? in of William Hale in Killers of the Flower Moon? I hope not, Cyborg. I hope not. The de aging thing was a necessity for The Irishman. It was a one-off because Scorsese and these guys, they wanted a film where they could all work together. This was the film they chose. By the time they actually got around to making it, they had these problems of the actors' faces being too old, and so that was a necessity. It was something horrendously expensive, but it was something that we all accepted to an extent because we said, okay, it's done. It's a one-time deal. Because of it, we got to see Joe Pesci, Al Pacino, Harvey Keitel, Robert De Niro, all in the same film, all directed by Scorsese. But we don't need that drama again, and I don't want to see that drama for Killers of the Flower Moon, because if it is a case of uh, needing de-aging CGI or anything like that, I really just think they should pick another actor to play William Hale. Even though I love De Niro, and I'm so looking forward to seeing him playing the role of William Hale. But I mean, you've asked me whether I think he will be, not whether I want him to be. And I just think we're missing something. There's something about Killers of the Flower Moon, something about this film that we're missing because, I mean, I don't know if you guys know, I've made a few videos on it. The movie is going to be costing something like 180 to 200 million dollars to make. And the story is practically a western set in 1920s Oklahoma. There's no real conceivable reason for it to be that expensive. So surely there must be something. And as you pointed out, it could be de-aging CGI. I don't think it will be. I think they'll just because De Niro is not the right age to play the character he's playing. If I remember correctly, William Hale was in his 40s when the events of the film were taking place, and De Niro's obviously in his mid 70s. But I think they'll just change up the age of the actor, or de-age De Niro slightly using makeup. But his age is not important in the film, whereas it is important in The Irishman, obviously, because it covers many decades. I just can't. I don't know. I really don't know what's going on with Killers of the Flower Moon. Why it's so expensive. You can hear me good, Mr. Red. Awesome. Mr. Red saying it's hot in the UK. Wow, I thought it'd be cold already. Yeah, it goes up and down. UK is a weird country with our weather. It could be piping hot in the morning, and then it could be pouring down with rain, and then hailstorms, and then go back to piping hot again. It's a strange country. The weather is quite infamous in this country, but I like it. I like the fact that we have so much. We have such a varied weather, even though sometimes it's bizarre and it's unorthodox and it comes out of nowhere. I mean, a lot of British people complain about our weather, but at the very least, it's not always snowing, always cold, or always hot. We get a bit of everything, which is nice. Stephen Butterfield, this is a completely serious question. Who would win in a fight, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man or Michael Keaton Batman? I think Spider-Man will take the cake. Spider-Man's got a lot of advantages in that he can climb walls. He's got the webs which can shoot, so far they can reach skyscrapers. Yeah, I think he'll cut it. Keaton will put up a good fight, but I think Spider-Man will get him in the end. Cyborg says, beside Red Dead Redemption, do you play other games? I used to play a lot more on the PS1 and PS2 generation. Some of my favourite games included the Driver series, Spider-Man 2 on the PS2 generation. What else was there? Time Splitters. I used to play FIFA a lot, the football games. The PS3 generation I didn't play a lot of because that was when I started growing up and other things got in the way. I wasn't really a fan of first-person shooters apart from Battlefield 3. What did I play? There's the GTA games. There's loads of different games here and there. This generation games, PS4, as you say, there's the Red Dead Redemption games. There's quite a lot I've got hidden away in the cupboard that I just never began. Just because of a lack of time. Very famous ones like Uncharted, Bioshock, and all of these. I have played a few here and there. I really enjoyed the Marvel Spider-Man game, the one that was released last year, I think it was, or the year before. What else is there? I'm just trying to think. Um, yeah, I'll have to check what I've got. It's been a while since I've pulled any out. I suppose I would actually, if anybody watched them, I would actually like to start. In addition to the things I'm already doing, playing games and reviewing them on the channel. Doom is another one. I really liked the new Doom reboot that came out. But yeah, that's something I'd like to start doing. I have reviewed a few games. I reviewed the new Ratchet and Clank game, one of them, Red Dead Redemption 2, Doom, and I think that's it. But nobody really watches them, and they take a lot of time to edit. And obviously, you have to play the game first, which could take anywhere from 10 to 50 hours. So yeah, that's in the pipeline, I guess, pipeline dream. Cyborg is asking which performance was better, De Niro in Casino or DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street. That's an interesting question. Um, See, I always felt De Niro was strong in Casino. It was a competent. It was what I might call. See, there's a word I used in one of my reviews. I can't remember what it was now, but it was a solid performance where he's not really doing anything new. He's he's he's. I mean, he's solid. He's given a great performance. A lot of emotion in his performance. You can see the frustration in trying to keep everything together. His casino, keeping his volatile best friend uh, from doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Obviously, the wife causing him so many problems. But it's not an amazing performance. DiCaprio in Wolf of Wall Street, on the other hand, and it's worth mentioning, I'm not really a big fan of Leonardo DiCaprio. This I felt was one of his standout performances of his career, because one thing I think with DiCaprio is that he tries too hard. You can always see he's it's like he's saying, "Look, guys, I'm acting. Look, I'm scrunching my face up. Look, I'm looking intense," and he's always it feels like he's acting as opposed to just being. And this was one of the films where he started to loosen up. It started with Django Unchained, where he played the bad guy and he looked like he was having a lot of fun. And then The Wolf of Wall Street, he was completely loose, he was completely free, and I loved it. And I would probably pick DiCaprio over De Niro for those two films in that comparison. All right, where are we? I've I've lost the chat. Okay, where are we? Stephen Butterfield asks, "What is your thoughts on The Wolf of Wall Street?" The first time I watched The Wolf of Wall Street, and this is a common occurrence with me with Martin Scorsese films, not all of them, but a lot of them, I watched it and I thought, was that it? It was decent, had a few nice scenes, but I didn't really connect with it. And then I watched it. Actually, no, I didn't watch it again. I think I gave it a break, and I started to think about the film more, and it went in my head, and I got an urge to watch it again. And when I watched it again, I enjoyed it a lot more. I think the reason is because when you watch a Scorsese film, you have preconceived notions about what it's going to be like. Like, obviously, The Irishman is a big one. A lot of people thought it's going to be a remake of Goodfellas, Casino. There's going to be, Joe Pesci's going to be Kung Pao, all that. People shooting each other, Rolling Stones, Gimme Shelter, quick cuts, all of that kind of stuff. And The Irishman was nothing like that. And that happens a lot with Scorsese because you just never know what style he's going to make a film in. And I was taken aback by the style of The Wolf of Wall Street. Very slow in places, long scenes with unbroken cuts, and then really fast paced in other scenes and quick cuts. And it was almost jarring. I couldn't make sense of it all. But yeah, I mean, it ended up being a film that I really liked. It's one of, I mean, saying one of my favorite Scorsese films is a bit silly because so many of his films I love, but I really enjoyed it. I like the fact that it worked on different levels. Like, some people might see it as just a sex, drug, and rock and roll comedy, which is fair enough. But there's also deeper levels to the film. You can see it as a critique of capitalism and just a showcase of what our lifestyle praises. You know, these people in the film are horrible, they're degenerates, but in a sick way, it's people like these who we're taught to be like, essentially, you know. And this thing with Scorsese is his films are always like that. They work on both levels. You know, you've got the artistic element of Scorsese trying to get a theme across, and he did mention he made this film in anger. He specifically mentioned the word anger. He was angry making this film. So you've got his artistic element, but you've also got mainstream appeal. This is one of the reasons why I think Scorsese has always remained relevant. He balances the two perfectly. You know, the mainstream appeal, so the masses are pleased, and then the deeper levels of the film, which can be best summarized in The Wolf of Wall Street. David Salgado, have you read every Scorsese novelization book? Nope, I haven't read any of them. Cyborg says, thank you for answering, no problem. Fabio is asking, have you watched the interview of George Valdez on Vlad TV? No, I haven't. David Salgado, Godfather Part 3 is 30 years old. Yeah, it is. Alex Spur, I love De Niro, but there is a movie called Dirty Grandpa, and it's the worst De Niro film by far of any of his. It might be the worst I've ever seen. I haven't seen that one yet. I might watch it one day, but I mean, I saw the trailer, I saw what it was about, and I thought this probably summarizes just the shitness of De Niro's late stage career, and I just didn't go anywhere near it. I used to be a kind of guy who, even De Niro's shit films, I used to watch all of them. You know, like Freelancers, what else was there? Red Lights. There was another one. Basically, you know, all these shit direct-to-DVD films that he's been making. I was watching all of them, hoping that I'd get a decent De Niro performance or a decent film. But by the time Dirty Grandpa came out around, I stopped. David Salgado, do you have Instagram? If not, are you going to get it? I don't, and I don't have any immediate plans to. To be honest, I don't really like social media that much. I have Twitter, but I don't really use it. It's just so I can get certain messages about my channel out. But even then, I just use my community tab. I might, you know, if it's something that is worth doing, but I don't have any plans for it now. Yes, I'm going to be that guy. Best cinematic game ever made is Far Cry 3. You don't know a campaign until you play Far Cry 3. I've actually played Far Cry 3. Yeah, that's one of the games I had. I really enjoyed that. I never finished the story though. I can't remember how far I got. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. Just the exploration of that island, driving the cars and just seeing where it took me. One of my favorite memories about that game was going in the sea, and swimming deep, and then getting attacked by sharks, because I didn't know there were sharks in the game, and that was very, very scary. I actually felt the impact. Steve saying Joe Pesci's role is exactly the same like Harvey Keitel's role in The Irishman, because in both movies there's at the start these a big mafia meeting, and in the next scene they both don't talk. Sorry, Steve, I don't understand that. Styborg, your thoughts on Bong Joon-ho, director of Memories of Murder, Snowpiercer, Okja, and Parasite? Believe it or not, Cyborg, I have not seen any of his films. I've planned time and again to sit down and watch specifically Memories of Murder, but also obviously the recent one, Parasite, even Okja, which I've got on my list, and I've had it on my Netflix list for ages, and Snowpiercer. So I've just never seen any of his films. Stephen Butfield's asking, what is your thoughts on the Oscars? I don't care. I think the Oscars are important for actors themselves, because they can demand more money, because obviously there's a pedigree attached to being an Oscar winner. But I don't really see any importance in them, and I think they're becoming less and less relevant as time goes on, especially with these recent changes they've been making, like the whole thing about, I'm sure you guys know, the diversity thing. So from here on in, every movie, so a movie can only be nominated for Best Picture if it fulfills certain criterias, and these criterias are based on diversity. So it has to have, an actor, a certain amount of actors from this ethnicity, or has to be about something. It's just loads of shit, really. To be honest, it's ruining creativity. I actually saw a list. Somebody made a list of all the Best Picture winners that would qualify, and Best Picture winners in the past that wouldn't. And there's some interesting findings, like The Godfather, for example. Perhaps the greatest gangster film ever made, perhaps the greatest film ever made. It would not have been nominated for an Oscar based on the current diversity and inclusivity rules that the Oscars, the Academy has. So do with that what you will. Mr. Red, Leo DiCaprio was great in Django and every Wolf of Wall Street. Such intense performances. Yeah, I liked him in both of those films. These performances really made me warm up to him, because I'm not someone who's really been that impressed with him. I think his films are good, but he himself is not someone who's really clicked with me. I loved him in Blood Diamond, and he was really good in some of his earlier films. And only recently I've been, quite fond of him. As you say, these two films, which are quite new. And The Revenant is another one. Dr. Andy, you're back. And the age-old question: would you do a movie review on The Emperor's New Groove? Of course I will, Andy. But patience, my son, patience. Steven's asking as well about The Emperor's New Groove review. It'll come one day. I love that film, by the way. Brilliant movie. Richard Morals is asking, have you ever seen Angels with Dirty Faces? Yeah, I have. That's the James Cagney one, wasn't it? And Humphrey Bogart's in it. Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. I love that film. That's a really, really good early gangster film. Funnily enough, the only reason I discovered it in the first place was because of that fake black and white gangster movie that Macaulay Culkin watches in Home Alone. That guy who's got the gun, and he's like, I believe you, but my Tommy gun don't. And I think it's called Angels with something, and I looked it up to see if it was a real film, and then I found that there is a film with a similar title called Angels with Dirty Faces, and I watched that. I don't know about you, Richard, but I really, really liked it, especially the ending. It's such a strong ending, one that keeps you thinking and gets a lot of discussions going. I'm not going to mention it, obviously, because half the people here probably haven't seen it, but a good gangster movie if you guys want to watch it, called Angels with Dirty Faces, made in the 1930s, I think it was, with James Cagney in it. Cyborg is asking, imagine if you were directing a remake of The Irishman, which actors would you cast for the parts of Frank, Russell and Jimmy? It would depend on what the parameters were, to be honest. Like, does it have to be actors of a specific age or something? Funnily enough, I would actually be really interested in seeing an Irishman with the same actors, but the roles switched around. So I think, for example, Pacino could have done a really good job playing Russell Buffalino. I think he really has it in him to play the older, quieter Don. He's had he's had similar roles in the past. Obviously, Michael Corleone in Godfather 3 is one that fits that bill. Before The Irishman came out, there were talks of Joe Pesci playing the role of Jimmy Hoffa, which that'd be interesting. Interesting to say the least. There was a strong support of that on the IMDb message boards. I remember when I used to hang around there before they closed them down, and I remember reading somewhere that if Joe Pesci did not accept, if he turned down the film, as he was doing, they would have asked De Niro to play the role of Russell Buffalino, and they would have got Liam Neeson or Pierce Bronson to play the role of Frank Sheeran. And again, that's very interesting. How would De Niro play the role of Russell Buffalino? So yeah, I mean, I would actually be interested in seeing the same film, but with the roles switched around. But even as it is, I think the casting in that film was brilliant. Fabio B. I think Brad Pitt's best epic acting was in the assassination of Jesse James. I really wonder why this movie never won an Oscar. The picture, the soundtrack, the acting, the dialogue, all of it. Did it never win an Oscar? That's surprising. It must have been nominated for at least best cinematography, surely, because Roger Deakins' work in that movie was amazing. There's one particular shot in that film, not necessarily shot, but scene in the film, where they're robbing the train. That's just an amazing mixture of images, emotions, and music. One of my favorite scenes, and I read up on that film, and Deakins actually said it was the proudest moment in his career. I mean, that must tell you something. Mr. Red, did anybody watch that Amazon series, The Hunters, starring Al Pacino? I saw the first episode. I think it was an hour and a half long, so it's basically a small movie, and I reviewed it if you want to check it out. I liked it. I thought it was interesting, but because I'm in a place in my life where I want to watch a lot more TV series, and I'm kind of going for the big ones at the moment, the ones that I know are really good. I didn't continue with it. There didn't seem a lot of interest in it on my YouTube channel either from my subscribers. That's one of the things I mentioned. If people wanted me to carry on with it, I would. But I watched the first episode, which was okay, and I just didn't continue to bother. Stephen Butterfield, I have no idea why De Niro would want to piss on his legacy with shitty films like Dirty Grandpa. It's not like he doesn't have money. Well, I think with De Niro's at a stage now where movies are no longer his main priority. They're not his main interest. He's won the Oscars. He starred in all the big films, legendary films. But now he's a businessman, isn't he? You know, he's got his restaurants. He's a business tycoon, and that's where his interest is. And I think he takes parts in movies where he doesn't have to do a lot, where he doesn't have to be in it a lot, but he gets a lot of money. And every so often, a role comes along that he has genuine interest in, like obviously The Irishman. But in general, I don't think it's a case of he's lost his touch or he's lost his ability. He just doesn't care anymore, which is a shame. But obviously, he has left us with a brilliant filmography. Daniel Cardiff says, Dirty Grandpa made me lose faith for De Niro until The Irishman came around. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people in the same boat. The Irishman kind of proved that De Niro still had it if he wants to bring it. As is the same with Joe Pesci and Al Pacino. A lot of people were thinking, and I actually made quite a few videos on this before The Irishman came out. I made one each for the three big actors, basically saying, have they still got it? Will they be able to bring it? Which was a question mark, especially with De Niro, because he was starring in absolute shit, and he just did not look like the same man that gave us amazing performances like Travis Bickle, like Jake LaMotta, like Don Corleone, and all the other great characters he's played. But of course, The Irishman showed, yes, indeed, he does still have it. Cheryl is saying Scorsese has adapted author David Grant's Killers of the Flower Moon, which goes into production next year. Yep, Cheryl, if you check out my YouTube channel, I've got loads of videos on Killers of the Flower Moon, and I've got loads coming out soon. It's one of the films that I'm going to be following until it comes out. I'm really looking forward to that. Kal-El, have you seen Tenet? No, I haven't. I'm not going to the cinemas yet. It's, I don't know about you guys, where you guys live, but in the UK, our cases of coronavirus are going up and up and up, and they're at the highest they've been since March, so since the whole thing kind of started. And there's serious talks of us going into a second nationwide lockdown. The government's response has been ridiculous. They're part of the reason why, and obviously people are being stupid. But yeah, I'm not really going back to the cinemas at the moment. Good to see you back, Cal. Yeah, thanks very much. Same to you. Daniel saying Oscars are pretty useless now. Yes, they are. Especially since they're not really the only prestigious award available to the film industry. There's a lot of others now, whereas before in the old days it was pretty much just the Oscars. Competition is always good. So I think YouTube needs competition as well. Funny enough, just a bit of a side thought there. Yeah, Mr. Red. Oscars irrelevant and boring. Stephen Butterfield, you can't really say Oscars are overrated when nobody really cares about them. See, one of the things I used to do was when I was young and I was getting into movies, I would look at the films that won the Best Picture or were nominated, and that way, that broadened my horizons. But if you do that now, with the recent films, you're really not getting anywhere near the level of best films that came out of each year. I mean, what films like? I mean, uh, it's just a lot of shit, man. The Oscars are just useless, is the word, as you guys have mentioned. Right, where are we? The chat's running away from me. Also, Steve's clarified. Sorry, I was trying to say they both have similar roles because they both pop up in two scenes and they both play mob bosses. Are you talking about both Keitel and Pesci? Because Pesci's obviously not in two scenes in The Irishman, he's in a lot more than that. Do you have a Goodfellas t-shirt, David? No, I don't. Daniel says Liam Neeson would have been a nice compromise. Yeah, I think so, maybe. I think he could have pulled it off. He does, these mediocre action films nowadays, but this guy is a good actor. When he's a bit like De Niro in the sense that he's clearly doing films with the money, but this man knows. I mean, he is Oscar Schindler. Let's not forget. I remember reading that Scorsese was having doubts whether Liam Neeson could do the accent. That was his only beef. But it never even came to it in the end because obviously Pesci agreed to play Buffalino, and then obviously De Niro went back to playing Frank Sheeran. What do you think of the Dune trailer? Asks Rutu M. I liked it. I've not read the book. I do not know a lot about this universe, but I know that there is potential for it to be the next Lord of the Rings, the next Star Wars, the next big science fiction fantasy saga. So I'm rooting for it. I did think it looked interesting, and it is something I want to watch. I mean, the director, Dennis V, he's amazing, isn't he? So anything that guy does, I want to watch. Cyborg Bushin is saying, what is your favorite TV series of the decade? Well, I would not be the right man to ask that question to because I've seen very little of TV shows. It's actually something I'm actively trying to do more of. So I'm starting with the big ones. I finished The Sopranos a couple of years back. Earlier in the chat, I mentioned that I started watching Peaky Blinders. There's a Turkish historical epic that I really like called Resurrection Ertugrul, which is really interesting. And there's a few others here and there that I'm looking to watch, but to be honest, I can't really say because there's so little of TV series that I've seen. Game of Thrones is another one that started really well, but they kind of trailed off in the last few seasons. Have I ever met Martin Scorsese? Asks David. No, I haven't. So Daniel is saying Hunters was all over the place. I liked it but couldn't get into it. I didn't like the main character at all. Interesting. Yeah, Alex Burr. Angels with Filthy Souls is what the fake movie in Home Alone is called. And Angels with Dirty Faces is what the real film is called. Mr. Red De Niro now could just mess around and do whatever he wants. In his mind, he has paid his dues. Yeah, I mean, it looks like. I mean, we might cringe when we see him in these shit films, but it does look like he's having fun, doesn't it? And whatever he's trying to get out of the films, which is probably money, I'm guessing he's getting that too. Although, have you heard this recent tabloid story, not recent. It was about a month ago, I think, where apparently he's broke, De Niro. Like he's lost a lot of money because of COVID-19. Like it's affected his restaurant chains. That news came about because his representatives mentioned it in a court battle that De Niro is having with his wife over the fact that his ex-wife, was because they're breaking up. She's claimed something like he's slashed her credit cards, like he's halved how much she's allowed to spend, something weird like that. And maybe it's just an excuse so that he doesn't have to pay his wife too much. But apparently, De Niro doesn't have as much money as we might think he does. But I don't really care. I don't really get involved in celebrity and actors' personal lives. That's not really my thing. I just thought it's interesting because we're talking about De Niro and paycheck rolls. Or maybe it's really bad news because it might mean he might start doing even more paycheck rolls to get back that money he lost from COVID-19. Dr. Andy, your dad loves Dirty Grandpa, does he? Good for you. Cyborg, your thoughts on Javier Bardem? He has become one of my favorite actors of all time. Unfortunately, I've seen only the kind of mainstream films he's done. The older ones he did, like the ones that he made with the guy who made The Revenant. I've not seen any of those. I've seen the kind of rubbish films, like what you call it, the Pirates of the Caribbean film he was in. I saw Skyfall, which he was the bad guy in. So I've only seen those kind of films. So I don't think I've seen the best of Bardem, but he does seem like a good actor from what I have seen. Fabio B's asking, have you ever watched a movie called A Prophet? If not, I recommend you watch it. No, I haven't, but I've heard of it for long. And funnily enough, Fabio, one of my subscribers recently emailed me and actually recommended me a few films to watch and review and talk about on the channel. And A Prophet was one of them. So I will have to check that out soon. It's the one about the Arab who goes to prison in France, isn't it? And he becomes a kind of kingpin inside. Sounds really interesting. Right, where are we? What is your favorite 2010s film? Asks Steven. Oh man, these kind of questions really uh, trap me because when you're live on a live stream and somebody asks you a question like that, all the films just kind of pull out of your head and you just forget everything you've watched. I can't think of an example, to be honest. Oh, well, let me see. You know what? I don't want to give you guys half-assed answers. Let me see if I can bring my film ratings up and see what I rate highest in the 2010s. I haven't used IMDb in ages. I don't even have to get to my account. Just a second. Oh, you can't group by decade, unfortunately. So I don't think I'll be able to answer that question. Yeah, sorry about that, Stephen. David, you have an email address. The way you phrase that, it makes it sound as though it's a statement, a declaration, which is kind of funny. But I mean, I guess you're asking me, have I got an email address? Yes, I have. I think you can find it on the channel. It's cineranta@gmail.com. Right, okay, where are we? Do you like Sylvester Stallone? Asks Mr. Red. As a person, I don't know if that's what your question is asking, but again, I don't really care about celebrities' personal lives. As an actor, and yeah, I do. I enjoy his action films. I'm a big action movie fan. I love all those 80s action films, like, the Rambos that he's done and all those kind of movies. But I also like him as an actor. I think he has got it within him to give some really good performances. Copland, like for example, Rocky. There's a few others here and there, but he's I like him. You know that. It's one of those where I feel as though he's a strong actor who kind of found his calling, his niche in action cinema, and he just kind of went for that instead. And every so often we get a decent performance from him in a dramatic role. He was good in Creed. He was really good in Creed. Do you watch French cinema? Asks Cyborg. No, I haven't seen much of French cinema. I actually mentioned in a previous live stream that it's one of the gaping holes in my film knowledge. Like, I've not seen any film from the French New Wave. Very few modern European French films, European films in general, like German films again. I've seen one or two Polish films here and there, but no, I haven't seen many French films. Elmond Phelan, what do you think of Gangs of New York? I really like Gangs of New York. I think it has a lot of problems. It's not a perfect film, and perhaps you could make the argument that Scorsese was overly ambitious with it, like it tries to do too much. But there's so many things that's going for it, Daniel Day-Lewis, the production design, the epic scope of the film. But there's blunders the film has. Like, I'm not a fan of DiCaprio in that film. I thought he was poorly cast. I thought the accent was off, and he just looked like a little schoolboy running around. Cameron Diaz is another one. And then there's the fact that the film is kind of it feels like it's got two different intentions, which makes sense because, as I covered in a video of mine called The Curious Case of Gangs of New York, Harvey Weinstein, the producer, who gave Scorsese loads of problems, by the way, like for example, they were shooting the finale and he stopped production, and everybody had to pack up and go home, and Scorsese hadn't even shot the ending. They had to go back and shoot it again later on. But anyway, Weinstein wanted the film to be a kind of three-way romance movie between DiCaprio, Diaz, and Lewis. He wanted that to be the focus, whereas Scorsese wanted to make a historical epic about the riots and the gangs and all of that. And you can kind of see there's two different films. They're kind of fighting with each other. In a way, I like it. I mean, calling it guilty pleasure is stupid because it's not a guilty pleasure. It is a good film. But in terms of Scorsese's filmography, I enjoy Gangs of New York as a guilty pleasure. I have a lot of fun watching it. Whenever it's on TV, I always want to watch it. I like the music as well. The editing is sublime, and yeah, I really enjoy that film. Dan Cardiff says Copland is quite an overlooked film, yet it is my favourite Stallone movie. Yeah, Copland is a really good film. It's got a good cast as well. Ray Liotta, De Niro, Harvey Keitel is really good in it. I've got a review coming out soon of that, by the way. I do these things. I've only done one actually, but they're called retro reviews. They're basically reviews of films I've already seen. I did one for Hoffa, the one made in 1992 with Jack Nicholson. My next one is coming out in a few weeks, and it's of Copland. So yeah, stay tuned for that. I really like that film. Good movie, good little small-scaled drama about police corruption with a really good cast. Dr. Andy says sometimes I'll watch Resurrection of Fugal with my father. Why not? Because it's my dad's favorite show. I'm not into that series, but don't just. I'll watch it with him. I'm getting confused by the sentence. Sorry. I'm guessing you're saying you just watch it because with your dad. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. I've reviewed the first season, by the way, if you want to check it out. Um, it, I kind of assumed because it was Turkish that I was just going to see a lot of Turkish government propaganda, a lot of shit CGI, just maybe cardboard characters and all that kind of stuff. But I was blown away. There's so much depth to the characters. The story is so interesting and it always keeps moving. And there's so many different characters the series juggles, but each one of them has an appropriate amount of screen time. It's a really, really good show, Resurrection of Turgle, and I would recommend it to anyone. It's on Netflix as well, by the way. It takes a while to get going. First few episodes, first season has a bit of poor CGI as well, because I imagine they didn't have as much money. But there's so much going for it. The politics, the backstabbings, the sword fights, and the fact that it is grounded somewhat in history. Of course, a lot of it is fake, it's fiction, but a lot of it is real as well. Good characters as well, really good characters. And I've reviewed. I haven't. It's not out yet, but I did watch and review the second season. Something I mentioned in the second season is that it might actually be shaping up to be my favorite TV show ever, so far at least. Copland is absolutely immaculate, says Mr. Red. Yes, it is. The ending too of Copland is just amazing, says Daniel. Indeed, it is. Okay, where are we? I've kind of lost the chat. Ryan Green, what's your opinion on Shutter Island? I love Shutter Island. I really like Shutter Island. It's again one of those that if it's on TV or something, I'll just put it on and I won't stop until it's over. I mean, some Scorsese purists don't like it because they feel it's a kind of popcorn flick, and yeah, it is, to be honest. But not every film has to be Taxi Driver. This one is entertaining. That's the word I'll use for it. It has a flow to it. It has a feel to it that it just kind of grips you and doesn't let go. It's so entertaining, and I just love the smoothness of it. And there's a film director called Mario Bava who made a lot of horror movies that I really like. Blood and Black Lace, and loads of other ones. And Shutter Island reminded me of his filmography. It felt as though Scorsese used the color schemes and atmosphere that Bava was known for, and he incorporated it into his film. That's one of the main reasons why I like Shutter Island. But other than that, it's a great mystery. It's a movie that is even better the second time you watch it because you pick up on loads of different clues and stuff. And it's got an absolutely knockout ending. One that, has kept people talking even today. A great film, I think. The Oncoming Storm has asked, have you seen The Proposition and The Assassination of Jesse James by the cow Robert Ford? They're my favourite westerns of the past 20 years. I haven't seen The Proposition. I've heard a lot about it. That's the Australian film, isn't it, I think? I've not seen that one. I have seen The Assassination of Jesse James by the cow Robert Ford many, many years ago. And I really enjoyed that film. I thought that was a really strong film, especially the way it was shot by Deakins. I thought he was on fire with that film. As I mentioned earlier in the chat, the scene where they're doing the the train robbery, is just amazing. Simply because of Deakins, the way he shot that, and the music as well. Do you like the movie Revolver, Ray Liotta and Jason Statham? Asks Fabio B. No, I have not seen that one. That's the one directed by Guy Ritchie, isn't it? No, I haven't seen that. Funnily enough, I did actually watch a movie called Revolver, but it's a different film. It's one made in 1973, which I thought was actually really good. I'm going to review that soon as well. Cyborg Bushin. One of the actresses I look forward to watch is Anna de Armas. She was in War Dogs, Blade Runner, and Knives Out. Any actress you look forward to watch? I can't think off the top of my head. I usually follow. I follow a few male actors here and there, but I don't really follow any women actors, to be honest. There's a few here and there. Because the thing is, with me, it's a case of I try and follow actors who have reputations for being in good films. Hence, me being a fan of De Niro. You know, all those films he made in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But I don't really follow any specific uh, actresses. There's a fair few I know of, but that's just because of their personality and their celebrity personas and stuff. Not really because of their filmographies. I don't really cyborg. David Salgado, what do you use to edit? I use a very simple video editor. It's called VideoPad Video Editor. Very simple one, very basic. I've been using it for ages, but it works for me. Daniel still hasn't seen Shutter Island. Yeah, you need to, man. It's a good film, worth checking out. It's I was just about to say something. I could have spoiled it. I won't say anything. But I love the way it was shot. Scorsese really oozes creativity with Shutter Island. It feels like one of those films where he could make it with his hands tied behind his back and in his sleep, but he's chosen to just go all out with creativity. Some really good shots in that film. Alex Spur, have you seen Ronin? It's underrated. It's a underrated De Niro film in my opinion. Yes, I have. I really like Ronin. Ronin, for those who don't know, is an action film that has two. It was made in the late 90s. I think it was in 1998. It's got that guy from Leon the Professional in it, and a few other notable faces. It harks back to those kind of Italian and French police movies of the 1970s. It's got two really good car chases in it. Two of the best car chases I've ever seen. The real kind of car chases, not these kind of Fast and Furious shit where cars are flying out of skyscrapers and moving planes and stuff, but raw, real car chases. And De Niro is the lead in the film. Sean Bean is in it as well. And I agree with you, Alex. Really underrated film, really good movie. I really enjoy that film. Cyborg Bushin, how do you feel about people who use traffic as an excuse for being late? Well, if this person happens to look like an Italian American gangster, and if he's wearing shorts, that's the big thing, then that for me is the deal breaker. Robert Pattinson is a dude in looking out for. I think you mean to look out for now, says Daniel. And if you do, I agree with you there. Pattinson's fast becoming one of my not necessarily favorite actors, but everything I've seen him in recently, he's blown out of the park. Even that there's a film that came out on Netflix a few days ago that I reviewed today called The Devil All the Time. I wasn't a particularly big fan of it, but Pattinson again was really good in that. He was really good in Waiting for the Barbarians, and just I think he's definitely outgrown his. He's moved past the Twilight stage, and the Harry Potter stage, and he's fast becoming one of the best actors in Hollywood. I really do mean that. I think he's really good from what I've seen of him. Stephen Butterfield's asking, have you seen They Call Me Trinity? Yes, I have. I've reviewed it as well. I'm just trying to think, is that the right one? Because there's a few those two made, wasn't it? Those two, the comedic duo. But yeah, They Call Me Trinity is the first one. Yeah, I've definitely seen that. I really like that film. It's a good movie. The music was great as well, wasn't it? The humor was on point. Yeah, good film. Good film, Stephen. Daniel says Ronin has a great car chase scene. Yeah, he's got two. There's one in the middle of the film as well. That when they go off road, and they're all going down that kind of hilly place, and then the one at the end obviously is just magnificent. Mr. Red, have you seen Upgrade? I highly recommend watching it. Great film, cyberpunk sci-fi flick. I haven't, no. I heard it's like a Venom movie, isn't it? They say that it's the movie that Venom should have been, like a prequel to Venom. I haven't seen that one. I've been wanting to watch that for a while. What's the worst De Niro film you've seen? Asks Alex Spur. Well, let me just have a look at his filmography, so I remember which ones. Because a lot of them, I are so bad you forget you've seen them. Some of them are so bad that they actually leave an impression and you can't forget them. Let's see. I haven't seen Dirty Grandpa. Heist wasn't that bad. I've got a review of that coming out soon. Not seen The Bagman. Grudge Match I thought was really shit. Someone once sat down and said, right, what if we got the two people in the most famous boxing movies ever made, Raging Bull and Rocky, and we put them in the same film, had them, gave them a fight. The Family was boring. Las Vegas was okay. I haven't seen Killing Season. Not seen The Big Wedding. Maybe Freelancers. I remember anything about that film. Let's see, what did I give it out of 10? I gave it a... Oh, it doesn't say. Don't know. Being Flynn was alright. Red Lights was really bad. And De Niro himself was bad in that film. He gave a really cringeworthy performance. Maybe Red Lights. You know. There's a lot from De Niro. From the shit De Niro stage that I haven't seen. Yeah, Red Lights I'd probably say is probably the worst De Niro film I've seen. Steve saying recently a religious film with Harvey Keitel came out called Fatima 2020. I heard of that, yeah. When I'm looking for news on this new Maya Lansky movie that Harvey Keitel's starring in, I often get news about Fatima. Fabio B, guess from which movie is the character Jim? Straight away, Goodfellas, man. Yeah, that's fantastic film, isn't it? You got Jimmy two times and so many. It's what that little montage is just fantastic. Because it feels so authentic, doesn't it? Jimmy two times because he says everything twice, and the fantastic editing that he ends up saying something twice. I'll go get the papers, and it feels real, doesn't it? Because people growing up, they give each other these stupid little nicknames, don't they? And somehow it just clicks so well. Does any of you guys watch The Devil All the Time, the new Netflix movie that came out? If you guys want a spoiler-free review, just check out the most recent video I made. What did you guys think of it? Because it's been getting a lot of hype, a lot of people going on about it. But I was quite underwhelmed. I thought it was well acted. Tom Holland was good. Robert Pattinson and the guy who played Pennywise in it. But I just felt the film wasn't really that strong. It didn't really have a kind of collective narrative, a kind of focus. It was just a lot of scenes of people being horrible to each other. It didn't really click for me. I thought it was too much like a book, if that makes sense. Stephen Butterfield says, yeah, I get what you mean. In fact, I actually mentioned that in my review, in that the guy who wrote the book, he narrates the film, and the narration is so pointless. Like, he's basically describing what's happening, and then when there's anything that happens that like the example I gave in my review was when one character shoots another, but nothing comes out of the gun, nothing happens. And then we cut to a flashback of somebody else taking the bullets out of her gun. So the scene explains it, doesn't it? There's no reason for narration, but then the narrator has to tell us, oh, this guy took the bullets out of her gun. Which, it's insulting. And one of the things I came away from the film feeling was that they were trying to read the book to us, as opposed to showing us a movie. But yeah, I get what you mean, Stephen. Cyborg says David Fincher will direct actor Gary Oldman in his next movie. I'm really hyped for it. Yeah, that's the one about the making of Citizen Kane, isn't it? It's been a long while since David Fincher's made a film on the big screen. I'm looking forward to that. And Gary Oldman's been in a bit of a rut. It'd be nice to see him in a good film. After he won an Oscar for playing Winston Churchill, he kind of went off the radar, started starring in a lot of C-grade films, which is really strange for Gary Oldman. But nice to see him in a big picture again. Steve is saying Joe Pesci's role in Eureka 1983 is based off mob boss Meyer Lansky. I've not seen that. Eureka. It's been mentioned a few times now on my live chat. Let's have a look at that. I think someone's... Yeah, this is one of Gene Hackman. Yeah, a few people have mentioned this. Told me to watch it. In 1925, Jake McCann becomes a rich man when he strikes gold, but 20 years later he faces his major personal and family problems. Oh look, Rutger Hauer's in it, Mickey Rourke, Joe Pesci. So what did you guys think? Is this worth watching? It's got a 6 out of 10 on IMDb. Obviously IMDb doesn't mean anything, but yeah, it might be worth checking out if it's decent. I watched 5 minutes of some point in the movie and was kind of bored, says Daniel. Are you talking about The Devil All the Time? Cyborg, who is your favorite Red Dead character? Mine is Dutch. His personality, charisma, and complexity makes him one of the best characters in a video game, period. Brilliantly portrayed by Benjamin Brian Davis. There's a lot of great characters in that series, especially in the second game, you know. They expand on so much and there's so much time developed for the gang. I'm going to have to go with you, you know. All throughout the second game, even the first game, even though we don't see much of him, but especially the second game, Dutch was such an interesting character. There was so much complexity to him, so many different theories as to what his end game was, what his motives were, what turned him crazy, even if he was crazy. You know, there's just so much to Dutch. But then obviously you've got John Marston, who's also a great character. None of us can forget Arthur, obviously. There's a few side characters that I really enjoy. I like the cook. What was his name again? Can't remember. But Lenny is another one. Javier. But yeah, the film is... The characters are the best thing about Red Dead Redemption 2. Definitely the characters. And by far, one of the most interesting is, as you say, Dutch. Yeah, Mr. Red. There's definitely a lot to look forward to, especially if Gary Oldman is in a David Fincher film. And yes, Daniel, like you say, he is a chameleon. Although not in recent years. In recent years, he kind of adopts the same kind of look and mannerisms, doesn't he? Unlike the Gary Oldman of old. But yeah, this is going to be an opportunity for him. Not necessarily to show us he's still got it. Of course he's still got it. He's a great actor, but he just kind of has dropped off the radar last 3-4 years. Hasn't really had a hit since he won an Oscar. It'd be nice to see him in a big film again. I thought the first 30 minutes was good, but after that it kind of fell apart. That's Steven talking about the Devil All the Time movie. What happens in the first 30 minutes? Oh yeah, that's the when the kid is young, isn't it? Yeah, that is actually interesting. The first 30 minutes, because you don't really know where it's going, and there's all sorts of weird, creepy stuff that happens. Dr. Andy, me and my mum are going to do a seance with Henry Hill on my 18th birthday. Okay, let us know how that goes. The Oncoming Storm. I really liked The Devil All the Time. I enjoy very dark and violent films, so I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm really glad you enjoyed it. Um, I'm just trying to find out if I've missed something, really, because I was quite dumbfounded in the sense that I thought the acting was great, the technical elements of the movie, the set design, the music, the way it looked, because it was shot on film as well, wasn't it? It was shot on 35mm. It wasn't even digital, so it doesn't have that glossy, cheap look that most Netflix movies have. It actually looks really good. It was great on a technical level, but something about it didn't click, and I was just trying to work out what that is. I mentioned this in my review that I think it may have been the director, as in he was the weak link, for me at least, obviously, because everything seemed to be going for the film, but there's something about it that just didn't work. It just felt like it had no soul, if that makes sense. Daniel Cardiff, John Marston in Red Dead 2 is a little whiny. Well, that's one of the interesting things about the game, because it's brilliant how the game plays on this, because obviously in the first game we love John Marston, don't we? Because he's the hero. We all know what happens at the end, all the things that he did to get his family back. Then in part 2 he's hardly in it at the beginning, and when he is in it, like you say, he's whiny. You know, he goes after women. He's a drunk. You know, he's all this crap. But Marston's transformation over the course of the game is one of the very best things about it. How he sees the value in his family more, how he becomes more and more of a man, and it all comes together in the very last mission of the game, American Venom, one of my favorite moments in the Red Dead universe, where John becomes the legend that he was in the first game. So yeah, he is whiny in the second game, but that's part of the point. It's part of his transformation, and he definitely doesn't end up as a whiny little git. I really hope one day they make a great mob movie starring Dustin Hoffman and Jack Nicholson, says Fabio B. I doubt it. It looks like Jack Nicholson's out of the game now, and Dustin Hoffman pops up here and there, but we don't really see him in anything big these days, unfortunately. Can you call me Mr. Butterfield, says Steven. Okay, sure. Whatever floats your boat. Cyborg Bushin, I really recommend you play the Last of Us game. It is one of the best narrative games of all time. The characters are so attaching and are brilliantly portrayed. The world, the soundtrack are top notch. Sure, I will note that down, Cyborg. I've heard a lot about that game. Whenever I kind of type in, the top 10 games ever made, I always see The Last of Us hovering around at number 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So yeah, thanks for the recommendation. Mr. Butterfield. Yeah, I get what you mean, Daniel, but I like that because he makes his character arc all the more powerful. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I hate Dutch, but he's a great character. He's always planning something, says the oncoming storm. He is, isn't he? I have a plan. Um, but I mean, he's an enigma, isn't he, Dutch? There's just so much to him. I could sit here and talk for 2 hours about Dutch and all the crazy things he did, and it's like especially that last mission in the second game. When they're on the mountain, and I'm not going into detail because in case there's people on here who haven't played the game, but there's just so much with Dutch. I love his character. Don't love him as a person, obviously, but I love his character. Steve says Frank Vincent would have had a good role in The Irishman as a loud or violent mob boss who complains in every scene he is in. Well, I've said so many times, Steve, that I would have loved, obviously he died by the time they're filming it, but I would have loved if Frank Vincent played Tony Pro. I think he was perfect for the role of Tony Provenzano for many reasons. First of all, he looks like the real Tony Pro. If you type in Anthony Provenzano on Google, the guy looks like a spitting image of Phil Leotardo. And then you have the fact that the character is very similar to the kind of gangsters Frank Vincent has played, in particular Phil Leotardo from The Sopranos. It's almost a spitting image. Just seeing him and Al Pacino go at it in prison, and then the "Your Late" scene would have been brilliant. Plus, this of a similar age, so because obviously that's one of the things that's a little bit jarring about The Irishman, because Stephen Graham doesn't look like he's the same age as Pacino when they're supposed to have been two guys who came up together. Obviously, if it was Frank Vincent instead, it would have been a lot more believable. Daniel, I haven't finished Red Dead 2 yet, so I look forward to it. Yeah, well, yeah, that's why. That's probably why you think he's John's whiny. Yeah, so without giving it away, he does man up, uh, and part of it is due to the character you play, Arthur, being something of a mentor to him. But he does change, he does transform, and he ends up becoming the guy that you played in the first game. Cyborg, how do you feel about people who use lumbago as an excuse not to work? Well, as long as you end up building a house with them later on in your life with your wife and kids with a cracking theme in the background, all is forgiven. And if he ends up dying protecting you, again, mate, all is forgiven. Hi, True Harm, nice to see you. David Salgado, what are some movies you think Sergio Leone should have directed? Well, I would have really liked to see the film he was working on before he died. He was working on a film called Lenningrad, which would have starred De Niro. It would have been scored by Ennio Morricone. I mean, that's a bit obvious, but he had actually signed on Ennio Morricone. And if I remember correctly, Leone had he had gotten $100 million to make the film. He got 50 million from one studio and 50 million from another, and at the time that was the highest budget for any film. It would have been the world record, and it's based on a book, and it would have been a love story of, if I remember correctly, a photographer or something who's stuck in a war-torn place, and he falls in love with this woman. And I mean, it's not even a case of the film sounds that interesting to me. It's just the fact that it's Sergio Leone, and anything he does is amazing. And he did his westerns, he did his gangster film, and now he was going to make a kind of war film. And it's a shame that obviously we never got to see it. If I remember correctly, the opening scene is available. Not the scene itself, but like a script version or description of it. And I read it very briefly, and it sounds very ambitious. The kind of amazing cinematography and camera work that Leone was famous for. Lumbago is a serious thing, says Mr. Butterfield. I think the Cyborg was making a joke about Red Dead Redemption 2, this video game. Have you seen Hoodlum 1997 with Lawrence Fishburne, Andy Garcia, Mike Starr, and Tim Roth? No, I haven't. Is it worth watching? That's a good cast you've just listed there. Daniel says, seeing how great of a guy Dutch is in 2 makes me sad for how he ends up. It's a very sad ending. Seeing him running around in a shirt that's the same color as his skin, and the way he ends up in his final scene in the first one, just a lunatic, deranged psycho that just. But it was really interesting, wasn't it, to see him slowly become unhinged throughout the course of the first game. Several characters go through transformations in that one. Dutch, John, Arthur. I forgot to mention when you were asking me my favorite characters, Hosea as well is another one I really love. He was perhaps one of the reasons why Dutch his insanity was accelerated when they lost Hosea. Glad you're feeling better this week, Ronta. Thanks, Druham. Thanks so very much for that. Mr. Red, I would have loved to see both Ray Liotta and Leonardo DiCaprio in The Irishman. That would have been something. Who would you have wanted them to play? There's not a lot of space in that film, is there? Who would you have, and who would you get rid of? I think Al Pacino did a fabulous job in The Irishman. I think he stood out the most as Mr. Red. Yeah, he was great, wasn't he? All three of the leads, Pacino, Pesci, and De Niro, I think, were fabulous. That's why the film exists in the first place. That's the reason why we were so excited to see these three guys in a Scorsese film, and all three of them knocked it out of the park. De Niro gave a very complex performance, which had some of his best scenes in his career, like the part where he phones Hoffa's widow. Pacino gave a vintage Pacino performance, which is all the more incredible because he was almost 80 years old when they filmed it. And Pesci showed that he could do more than just scream and shout when he played the obviously quiet and reserved, but very detailed performance of Russell Bufalino. Chris Costello, there's a great indie movie with a mafia backdrop, Ghost Dog: Way of the Samurai. I've heard of that. Yeah, that's the one with what's his name? The black dude. I can't remember his name now. But the guy with the lazy eye. Yeah, he's. I've heard quite a lot about that film. I really want to watch that. Where are we? Cyborg is saying that it's a shame that director Brian De Palma has fallen into complete anonymity. His last movie, Domino, starring Nicolaj Costa or Waldau, was a weird movie when Scorsese is at the top of his game. Yeah, De Palma. The thing is, with me, it's strange because I never really rated De Palma that much. I mean, don't get me wrong, he has made some great films, and he is a good director. Those kind of old Alfred Hitchcock films he made, the Scarface, Carlito's Way, The Untouchables, Carrie. But I never really felt he was in the same bracket as Scorsese and Coppola and all of these film directors. I think because he comes from the same generation, the Hollywood New Wave generation, he often gets lumped in with them. But he's not necessarily in the same bracket in terms of talent. And so I think I can kind of see that he would eventually drop off. As with most of these film directors, it's not so much that De Palma has dropped off. That's surprising. It's that Scorsese has stayed at the top of his game. No other film director from the New Hollywood New Wave, that kind of '70s generation, has stayed at the top of his game like Scorsese. Sorry, I guess the only competitor would be Steven Spielberg. But even Spielberg, I think he's lost his magic. I don't think the kind of family-friendly movies he makes now have the same magic as his films from the 80s. And when he tries his hand at serious films like Bridge of Spies, they're just nowhere near the level of films like Schindler's List. But yeah, Brian De Palma, the guy's dropped so far off from his heyday. Forrest Whitaker, yeah. Thanks, Daniel. So where are we? So Steve saying Frank Vincent's other good performances like Spike Lee's Jungle Fever, Mortal Thoughts, 1991 with Bruce Willis, Demi Moore and Harvey Keitel, Wise Guys with Danny DeVito and Harvey Keitel. Okay, that's interesting. I haven't seen any of those. Mortal Thoughts has a good cast, doesn't it? Wise Guys is a film that I've been wanting to watch for a while. I think I was put off because a lot of people said it was shit. But I mean, the cast is worth the price of admission, surely. Have you guys seen a film called Chicago Overcoat? It was Frank Vincent's last proper mafia film, made in 2008, I think it was. I reviewed it on the channel a few days ago if you're interested. Not bad. It's one of those cheap films that's made for like $1 or $2 million and doesn't really get a theatrical release, but it wasn't bad. I thought it was pretty decent. If you're in the right mindset, if you kind of go in with no expectations, you can enjoy it. Mr. Red, yeah, I guess there wouldn't be any space for Leo DiCaprio and Ray Liotta, but it would have been nice if they made a cameo appearance in The Irishman. But funny enough, I had a big rumor that, and this rumor even stretched to the cast because I've spoken to a few of the actors in the film, and even guys like uh, what's his name now, Craig Vincent. I actually asked him about is DiCaprio going to be in the film because I heard he has a secret cameo in the film as Robert F. Kennedy, but that turned out it wasn't true, and he didn't know. And because he didn't know, I thought it might actually be true because maybe they're hiding it from the cast as well. But yeah, that turned out not to be true. Imagine if DiCaprio did pop up as Robert Kennedy. I think that the role is so minimal that having such a high profile actor like DiCaprio would have actually been too distracting, to be honest. Yeah, classic Pacino, Mr. Red. Yeah, I agree. Close to 80. That is so immaculate. I mean, that's one of the things I keep going on about. I keep saying to people, I cannot believe Pacino was almost 80 when he made The Irishman. His performance is just got so much energy. And people say to me, oh, he was de-aged. They use computer-generated effects. And I say to them, no, I'm not talking about his face. I'm not talking about the effects. I'm talking about his performance. The way he spoke, the way he moved, his mannerisms. If you guys watch that scene in Frank Sheeran's Appreciation Hour where Pacino talks to Joe Pesci when he talks to De Niro, it's just amazing acting. So much detail in his performance. So many different thoughts that you can see going through his head, and some of which are concealed, and some of which actually he blurts out to the people he's talking to. It's an amazing performance. Cyborg says the saddest scene in The Irishman, in my opinion, was the prison scene with Frank. This scene always gets me. Seeing Pesci as old as Scorsese's mum in Goodfellas was heartbreaking. Yeah, man. For me, it was when De Niro phones up Hoffa's wife. That's the most heartbreaking scene for me. But the prison scene as well, especially because it contrasts with this scene earlier on in the film where De Niro and Pesci break bread, of with the wine and the bread, and it's almost like it's saying goodbye to these actors. Like you're seeing them as they are. Obviously, they don't really look like that in real life, but you're kind of seeing that your favorite actors, De Niro and Pesci, they got old, and soon they're not going to be here. And it's so ominous, that last shot of Joe Pesci, the very last shot of Joe Pesci in a Scorsese film, perhaps in any movie, any movie now, because he's gone back into retirement, is of him all old, being pushed in a wheelchair. And that's the last we ever see of Joe Pesci in cinema, most likely. Yeah, Mr. Red. Uh, that is a sad scene where at the end De Niro is sitting all alone by himself. Yeah, his punishment for the life he's lived. It's it's very thought provoking, isn't it? Seeing him staring at the door, even the fact that he wants it open. There's some. I actually made a video called "The Irishman Ending Explained" where I go through this a lot. One of the things I get from the ending is that I feel as though he wants anyone, to just walk in to spend time with him. The apex of his want would obviously be his daughter Peggy, or any of his family members. Of course, none of his old friends are gonna come; they're all dead. But he's just alone, just alone with his memories, his story. The only person who knows about this story is the audience, us, who he was telling it to. Yeah, very sad scene, the ending. Mr. Red. And Al Pacino's so humble, he's still waiting for the role of a lifetime, as he mentioned about a year ago. An interview from my recollection, which bowls me, as he's Al Pacino, he's a legend. Yeah, Pacino is, especially when you consider his pedigree, it's actually quite funny how he comes across so normal, so downbeat and down to earth, and he's very, very humble. When you see him in interviews, he just comes across as a normal, chill guy. And there's this certain interviews. There's one where he had a car accident and he was talking about this in an interview, and he came up to the guy who he crashed into, and he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. How are you? Are you okay?" And all this kind of stuff. And the guy who he was talking to was just he was staring with his mouth open because he couldn't believe Tony Montana had come up. He crashed into Michael Corleone, and Pacino, being Pacino, forgot that he is Pacino, if that makes sense. So that kind of, what I'm basically saying is he's not one of those guys, do you know who I am? He's the kind of guy who literally forgets who he is. Have you read any Marvel or DC comics? Says David Salgado. No, I've read a few here and there. Not really that many. I remember reading one Doctor Octopus, one where him and Spider-Man go at it with each other. I don't really know the different series of all the different superhero comics. I'm not really someone well vested in all of that. I've read one or two here and there, not many. Steve saying Hoodlum is a great mafia film. Andy Garcia is Lucky Luciano. All right, Andy Garcia playing Luciano. I didn't know that. I'm pronouncing it wrong. I always say Luciano for some reason. Luciano is how it's pronounced, as people have told me time and again. I think I'm just used to saying that. David Salgado, some favorite black and white movies. Harakiri is a good one, very good one, made in 1962. It's a Japanese movie, where it's basically thematically it's about loads of things like honor, integrity, pride, respect, and the story, without giving it away, involves a grizzled old samurai knocking on the door of a clan, saying that he wants to commit harakiri, which is an honorable suicide because he's got no reason to live. And they say, "Okay, listen, can we tell you a story before you agree to this?" And he says, "Yeah." He goes, "We've had someone come and ask for this before, and he came, and it was not a pretty sight when he killed himself. He looked like he regretted it. And did you know this guy?" And the guy goes, "No." And basically, I mean, I'm not explaining it properly because I'm trying to avoid spoilers, and I'm not doing a very good job of getting the gist of the film. But this clan is pissed off because they think they're being made fools out of, because people keep coming and saying they want to commit suicide, and they give them a bit of money and send them on their way, and they realize people are just coming for God knows reason what. So the next person that comes along, they force him to commit suicide, and it becomes really horrible for them to look at. So this old grizzled guy, they say to him, "Did you know that guy? Are you sure you want to go through with it?" And he says, "Yeah, no, I'm cool." And when the time comes for him to actually commit it, when they send somebody off to pick a second for the guy, the guy who stands behind them and chops the head off, if he's not able to commit suicide properly, he says, "While we wait, why don't I tell you my story, how I came to be in this situation?" And then he says, "That guy who you were talking about before, I did know him, and I knew him very well." And then the story kind of begins. I didn't really explain that properly, but the Harakiri is an amazing film. 12 Angry Men, another one. Psycho. I loved a lot of the old gangster films like White Heat with James Cagney. I love noir movies like The Maltese Falcon, The Big Heat. So yeah, David, I think I've answered your question. Those are some black and white films I really like. Joe Pesci's character in Catchfire in 1990 is exactly like his other iconic roles. Goodfellas and Casino. He blows up every scene he's in. Oh really, Steve? I've not seen that one. Must be worth checking out then if he is the case. Mr. Bartfield, do you know one time Christopher Lee broke his car down, then fell into some dirt and walked into a random woman's house thinking he could get help, only for the woman to faint because she thought he was Dracula? What the hell? That's jokes. I thought that this story was going to go into a kind of misery plot where he was going to get kidnapped and tortured by a big fan. Cotton Club Chris is recommending, that was directed by Francis Ford Coppola, wasn't it? I think so. Yeah, yeah. I've not seen that. Worth watching just for the words mafia and Francis Ford Coppola alone, I think. Cyborg, your thoughts on Christian Bale? I just think he's a living goldmine of acting, a true chameleon, a method actor in the soul. He always elevates the movies he is in, and he can really play any role. I like him. I really, really like him. As you say, he elevates any movie he's in, and Christian Bale is just fantastic, isn't he? You know, I don't really know what else to say. It's just that every time I see him, apart from a few films here and there, like paycheck movies like Terminator Salvation, but the Rescue Dawn he was brilliant in. All of Christopher Nolan movies that he's done, again, brilliant. I just really like this guy. Definitely one, and he always goes all out, even with his body transformations, his accents, the look. He's very, very good. Definitely one of the top tier actors out there. The Machinist. I've not seen that one, Chris. I've been wanting to catch that one for a long time. Not seen that one. Mr. Red. I would say James Cagney Public Enemy is a great black and white film. I've not seen that one. That's one of the few oldie gangster films I haven't seen. I've seen a lot of Cagney's movies, but not Public Enemy, which is the one that put him on the map, wasn't it? If I remember correctly. I think the reason why I didn't watch it was because the ending was given away. I know what happens at the end. A very powerful ending, by the way. Even though I didn't see it with context, but it actually quite disturbed me when I saw it when I was a kid. And maybe just knowing what happens right at the end put me off. David Salgado asks, do you think Robert Zemeckis is still good? Well, to be honest, I haven't seen. I pretty much haven't seen any of his recent films. I didn't watch The Walk, Allied, Welcome to Marwen, Flight, A Christmas Carol. I saw a bit of Beowulf, but yeah, I've seen his old films like Back to the Future, Cast Away. What else was it? There was that horror film. Yeah, what was it called? What Lies Beneath. Yeah, but I haven't seen his newer films, so I can't really say, to be honest. Steve says, I thought Harvey Keitel would have a bigger role in The Irishman, but he had an amazing cameo. Yeah, with Keitel, I knew he was going to be in the film for a very short time. I even made a video called Why You Shouldn't Be Excited for Harvey Keitel in The Irishman. And because I read the book, and I knew that Angelo Bruno's hardly in it, and if they're going to make a streamlined film, he's going to be even less than he is in the book. But like you say, Keitel was so effective. He's basically in one scene, isn't he? That scene where he scolds De Niro. Other than that, he's pretty much in the background in maybe 2 or 3 other scenes. But you just feel the intensity of him oozes. He's just so scary and masculine. And he was amazing. Everybody who watches The Irishman says that, wow, I loved Harvey Keitel. I wish he was in the film more. And that's what you want, as an actor. He knows he's done his job well then, if that's what people are saying about him. But on a more, selfish level, I would have wanted him to be in the film a lot more. Imagine a film where it's not just De Niro, Pacino and Pesci, but it's De Niro, Pacino, Pesci and Keitel all throughout the film. That would have been great. But, it was great that he was even in the film, because there was a good chance that he wouldn't be in it. So it was a lovely, lovely bonus to have him in the film. Chris, yeah, Double Indemnity. Yeah, that is a stunning film. What are you saying? Double Indemnity is probably regarded as the most classic film. I'm not sure. I think it is. Yeah, maybe The Maltese Falcon, Double Indemnity, but Double Indemnity is really, really good. I really like that film. brilliant movie. Dr. Andy, have you seen the movie The Deer Hunter? Yep, ages ago I watched it. Very powerful film. Very long as well, wasn't it? Wasn't it about like an hour before anything really happened? There was just like an hour of character development, that big party scene. But yeah, that's a very strong film. Although not my favourite performance of the man himself, but I believe The Irishman presented the most humanised version of Jimmy Hoffa as a caring family man and a force in the Union, says Jonathan Goodboy. Yeah, so good. That's an interesting perspective, because in the little we see of Hoffa's relationship with his family, Sheeran's family, and exactly who he was in terms of his union, they really bleed through the fact that his union meant so much to him, and obviously the human element with how close he was to Peggy and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, I agree with you in that, and it was difficult for Pacino to get that across because there's so little time for him to do it. Most of the stuff with Pacino is him trying to stay out of prison, and then the beef between him and the mob. But there's very little time actually spared for the union and for the whole family element. But he did a really good job in bringing that through. And Chris says Keitel should have played Hoffa. That's interesting. I think maybe Keitel. Actually, Keitel is one who might be difficult to de-age, I think, because he's. Saying that sounds quite hypocritical. Because I was gonna say his voice sounds really old, but then again, so does Pacino's, doesn't it? I mean, I guess all of these guys, they're so good. Any one of them could have played any one of the big roles in the film. Do you like Adrian Brody? Says David. I'm not seeing too much of him, to be honest. I haven't seen The Pianist, which is what he's most famous for. I've just really seen most of his shit films that he's done since then. I saw him in Predators, where he was pretending to be Christian Bale. What else have I seen? I've seen him pop up in films like the Budapest Hotel. Sorry. Yeah, not seen much of him, to be honest. So don't really have much of an opinion. Yeah, Stephen. Sorry, Mr. Butterfield. I was kind of thinking that as well. Does Keitel have the energy to play Jimmy Hoffa? I've not seen any evidence that he does. He's been very mellow and laid back in roles that I've seen him in recently. And plus, I mean, the guy is 80, you know. But Pacino really, energy is the word that comes to mind with Pacino's performance. But I don't think Keitel would have brought the same level of energy if he were to play Hoffa. He was perfect as Angelo Bruno. Bruno, obviously, one of his nicknames in real life was the Gentle Don, and Keitel really personifies the scariness of mobsters. Not the kind of, you know, Joe Pesci and Goodfellas scary, screaming, shouting, fuck you, all that, but the kind of simmering undertone, the quieter is scarier kind of thing, you know, the real bosses who don't have to scream and shout. And he's very scary in The Irishman. Steve says, I'm so excited to see Eddie Murphy come back in Coming to America. He was great in his recent film, Dolomite Is My Name. Yeah, Dolomite Is My Name is brilliant, man. I had an operation. I had a hernia removed. Sorry, a hernia repaired. And when I came home, I watched Dolomite. I just got a Netflix because of The Irishman, and I wanted to check out what the fuss was about. And I watched this film called Dolomite Is My Name. It was so funny that I nearly popped my stitches. Seriously, I needed to go back to hospital almost because the film was that funny. It was amazing. I honestly believe Dolomite Is My Name is Eddie Murphy's best performance. I've seen all the old films, 48 Hours, Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cops. I seriously think Dolomite is his best. An amazing comeback for Murphy. And like you, I am looking forward to Coming to America too. But I have heard that it's going to be PG-13. So my expectations are a little bit more reserved. I do think a PG-13 Coming to America can work, but the original was definitely R-rated. There was some things in that film that would not fly in PG-13 films. The only good thing Adrian Brody has done lately was star in Peaky Blinders as a mobster, says Mr. Red. Oh yeah, I forgot he was in that. I haven't gotten that far yet. I've just finished season 1. I haven't even seen Tom Hardy yet, who apparently comes in season 2, I think. Chris says, "Do you like Hitchcock?" Yes, I love Hitchcock. One of my absolute favorite film directors. Love his films. Cyborg says, "My favorite movie of the decade is Blade Runner 2049. I watched it 10 times since its release, and it's still mind blowing. Like, every frame, every color, every second of it is almost like a dream." Yeah, they did really well with that film, didn't they? It's one of the reasons why I think Dennis will do good with the Dune film. I mean, who in their right mind could say that, listen, we're gonna make a Blade Runner movie 30 years after the first one, even though just simply making a new Blade Runner, you'd expect would ruin the fantastic ending of the first film, the cliffhanger ending. And they made it. They had Harrison Ford in it, and somehow they managed to make it work. It was still a brilliant film. Chris says Vertigo is my favorite Hitchcock film. Same here, Chris. Vertigo is so hypnotic. It's so surreal, isn't it? It's very different to Hitchcock's other films. He's known as a thriller guy, but he's dabbled in like the kind of gothic film noir, like with Rebecca, the kind of espionage kind of films with North by Northwest. But Vertigo is different. Vertigo has a very surreal, hypnotic atmosphere that really captivated me and hypnotized me. And it's one of the few films I've ever rated a 10 out of 10. I've not rated it on the channel. I never got around to reviewing it. But on my IMDb account or something, I've only got about 8 films or something that have 10s, and Vertigo is one of them. Where are we? Seventh Seal. I've not seen that one, Chris. Heard a lot about it. Mr. Butterfield's going. I love this, but I have got to go to bed, so have a good one, mate. Same to you. And you know what? On that note, I think I'm going to end this now as well, because I'm getting really tired. Mr. Damn, you got excited. You must really love Alfred Hitchcock. Yes, yeah. There you go. Yeah. So, yeah, guys. Unless there's any major questions or anything anybody wants to talk about. I'm really tired for some reason. I didn't get enough sleep last night. I think we had a good run, 1 hour 52 minutes. Still got about 15 people on here. So yeah, shall we call it a day, lads? If you guys got nothing to say, let's end it there then. So yeah, Butterfield, Chris, David, Mr. Red, Dr. Andy, Cyborg, everybody who's still on here. Have a good night, good day, good afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are, and I shall see you next week, hopefully. Live streams are always Saturday, 6 o'clock Washington time, 11 o'clock UK time, unless I make an announcement on my community tab that I'm not doing it. So yeah, I'll catch you then.